Welcome to another exciting episode of Kevjet, the podcast. This week's guest is Delta. It all started in Athens.
Yes. Yes, it did.
He tells us how his time in the army has shaped his now music career.
I was studying in England and then I had to go back to Greece because it's compulsory. Every male in Greece has to go to the army, otherwise you can't have a passport.
I ask him how he's found his style.
As in the army, when you see yourself in an army suit, you perceive yourself a certain way. When you see yourself in clothes that you're not used to see yourself in, you feel totally different and very liberated. And you're like, is this me? This is so cool. Because I think in art, it's nice to throw in unexpected elements, and have different things that contradict each other. So that's why I find it super interesting when you have, a male in very feminine outfits or makeup. It just makes it something. It draws my attention.
He tells us about life on the road.
This is amazing. It is the first time I got to tour the UK.
We discuss his hits, his current single, and his disco influences.
Yeah, this, especially on the mid to late section of Happy Out of Love, is so obvious. It's funny because all of these questions have a twist in the end. So I'm like, okay, I know the answer. But
join me for my conversation with the very charming Delta. Welcome, Delta, to Kevjet, the podcast.
Hello, Kevin. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's very nice to meet you, finally.
Yes, true. Actually, it's funny because I saw the podcast when you followed me on Instagram, and you have the sticker that's blue. And I always, when I see that sticker, I think it's someone, super famous. I go into their profile and I saw the podcast then before, Lara or Becky actually told me that you're
wow.
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
I saw the one, I don't remember his name, but he was on OnlyFans. It was a guy who was a nurse, I think.
Yeah.
Was he a nurse? Yeah. And it's, anyway, an interesting side.
It's a crazy story. I love telling people that story because it's something that you normally wouldn't hear in everyday life.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I'm glad you listened.
Yeah.
Well, let's start from the beginning. So it all started in Athens.
Yes. Yes, it did.
So just tell me what growing up in Athens was like.
It was very, very nice. I think very different to the UK or anyone listening from the US or other parts of Europe, because I think Greece, because of its location, is pretty conservative. It's something in between, I think, Middle East and Europe in terms of the mentality. It's super conservative, but also on the other hand, because it's a small country, nothing really, happens there. Like, we're not involved. We're not the focal point of any story, apart from the crisis of 2009, where we were owing money to everyone. But it was very nice growing up in Greece, actually. Very, very different and quite serene, I'd say.
So it was a great upbringing.
Yeah, musically there isn't that much happening. There's a local scene, but it's interesting because there was and still sort of is a movement to try and get more people into the arts. So there are many conservatories in Greece, and the government's also subsidizing the tuition fees as they try to get more and more people involved, which was very nice. And now I can see now, some years later, a wave of artists starting to emerge from Athens, which is very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one point I was actually going to bring up. So that came from kind of the financial crisis. There's like this big wave of young people coming out. It's not just music, is it? It's sports, it's entertainment
Exactly.
as a whole.
I think, it's funny because when the crisis started and when Greece was in its worst position in 2012, I was then in London, I was studying. And I remember I was moving back and forth, and you could feel in the atmosphere. This was not just in my conception, like everyone felt this way. When you were going back, you felt instantly, as soon as the plane landed, a very heavy atmosphere. I don't know how to explain it, because we were in a very difficult position, and you could tell, from people's faces, just perhaps everyone around you, they're having a hard time financially. So that sort of pressure, I think, it is one of the reasons which led to many people, because when you feel that pressure, you sort of react to it by doing something. And we have now, even in the NBA, like Giannis Antetokounmpo is like one of the top players. He was MVP actually. Tsitsipas in tennis. We have Lanthimos who does movies, but all of them emerge sort of after that crisis, if it makes sense. And
Yeah,
it's
of course.
interesting, yes.
And you're part of that story.
Yes, I think so, yes.
Your first single, which was released in the UK, Hypocrites. Do you want to talk about that? There's a really interesting backstory to that.
Yes, so I wrote that song when I was in the army. So when I was studying in England, and then I had to go back to Greece because it's compulsory. Every male in Greece has to go to the army, otherwise you can't have a passport, which is horrible. Or you have to get a doctor's, let's say, paper that says that you're not mentally unstable or something, which is, anyway, most of the people have to do it. And Hypocrites is actually about my experience of joining the army and seeing how different the reality was. It's interesting when you see yourself in an army suit and everyone around you is in army clothes. It's very odd. I don't know if you know the Stanford experiment, where they have people dressed as guards and people dressed as
Civilians. Yeah.
That you embody that role. And I saw that happen into the army like in real time, because I knew some people. And when you go in, people start acting differently just because of the uniform. And the superiors also think they should act a certain way. And it's a very, anyway, odd thing to realize, and a unique experience. So talking about Greece, this is a very unique, I think, experience to being Greek. Yes, so I wrote that song about that realization of all of us and putting myself in there, right? I mean, so that I changed, but I found that sometimes I'm being a hypocrite according to my beliefs, and I'm not fully, embodying or living up to my values.
Do you think that being enlisted in the army was a positive experience for creativity now?
It's funny because when it ended, I did a post on Instagram and I said, if I could go back and do it all over again, I wouldn't. But honestly, now I'm glad I had that experience just because of what I realized through it. It's quite unique, but I didn't enjoy it one bit. It was
How long did you have to do it for?
It was 1 year.
Okay,
and it's not just that it's 1 year. It's 1 year where you're full of energy, wanting to do things, but you're forced to do something that you don't believe in, and you have to be guarding some place that doesn't even probably need you there, So it's just about wasting time.
sure.
I mean, your time is sort of wasted, and it's a time where you want to create and do things.
Did you always know you wanted to perform?
Yes.
And so you're then placed into the army where you look like everybody else, and they kind of strip your identity.
Exactly. And yes, they do strip your identity. And it's funny because you have to hand in your ID, your national ID, and your passport in the beginning. And it's funny because I told them I lost my passport and I had it home in a safe because I couldn't feel, that I would hand over any paperwork that would allow me to leave the country. I mean, psychologically speaking, it's very odd when you hand over someone, your papers and you can't leave. Anyway, it's a whole different story.
It's a different world, really, when you think about that.
Yes, it is. It is really.
Do you think that that's where your fashion expression comes from after being in the army?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Join us each week on the Well Beyond Medicine podcast as we explore the 80% of child health impacts that occur outside the doctor's office. Listen and subscribe at nemourswellbeyond.org, where you'll hear pediatric experts, researchers, and policymakers from around the world discussing ways they are revolutionizing children's health. I'm your host, Carol Vassar. Let's go.
Let's go. Well beyond medicine.
I think it was a reaction, certainly, to how conservative things were and are in Athens, because It's interesting. Many people have asked me this question as to, what is it like? Why do you do it? How did it even come about? Because especially in Greece, and at the time when we started globally, this wasn't a sort of thing as it is now for, artists, male artists who dress in feminine clothes like Harry Styles. And it's interesting because in 2020, when lockdown happened, I changed manager, and I had, let's say, a quite bad experience with my previous manager. And when the new one came along, he told me, okay, let's start sort of fresh, write songs, and let's look for producers. So I wrote a bunch of songs, and we were about to send them to producers, but then we thought we need to attach some pictures to the songs when we send to them. And the ones you have now, it's fine. They're just not interesting. It's just another, guy in Athens. Like, it just, so do whatever you want. I'm not going to say what you will do. So just, take a friend, take some pictures, and we'll send the songs with those pictures attached. And I have a friend his name is Artis, and he used to come to live shows to take pictures of me. And I called him up during COVID. I told him, I have this project, and I need to take some random pictures to send the songs with. And he told me, okay, let's do it. So he called up a couple of his friends who are stylists and makeup artists, and no one had any work. So we got a studio space, and again, like, no one had anything to do. So they all jumped at the opportunity of, it wasn't about getting paid even. It was about, we haven't done anything for so long. We just want to create and do our job and feel normal again.
Be creative.
So exactly, and be creative. So we went in this space, and we had so many clothes, so much, makeup and different accessories. And we just put the music on. And it's because it wasn't a photo shoot for a fashion magazine or for anything, that would be public. We just went to town with it and just really did anything. It's funny because the stylist then would ask me, would you wear, this? And we started off like quite conservative. And I was like, yes, of course. But then I thought she was also pushing my boundaries. She's like, yeah, but would you wear heels? And would you wear this? I'm like, yes, I would wear anything. And when you do that, it's funny because when you see yourself, as in the army, when you see yourself in an army suit, you perceive yourself a certain way. When you see yourself in a clothes that you're not used to see yourself in, you feel totally different and very liberated. And you're like, is this me? This is so cool. So we did that, and it went really well. And I enjoyed it, first and foremost, so much. And that's how the style sort of emerged. I just found it so interesting. Because I think in art, it's nice to throw in unexpected elements, and have different things that contradict each other. So that's why I find it super interesting when you have, a male in very feminine outfits or makeup. It just makes it something. It draws my attention, and that's how it sort of started.
It's just very interesting. It's a spectacle, and it's show business, isn't it?
Yes, it is, exactly.
Have you found your style?
Yes, I think I'm finding myself as I go along, but it's interesting because this happens in music as well as in my fashion sense, that I take things to extremes just to realize what about it I actually value and like, and I incorporate that into my overall style, if this makes sense.
That was a question I have, actually. So has that continued into your everyday life?
Yes, it has. So now it's interesting because it used to be the case where I would dress in a very specific way for live shows and a very different way when I was going out with friends. But for instance, I don't know if you can see, it's a podcast, I know, like people can't see this. I'm just lifting this coat because this is the coat that I wear now. It's a zebra, for our listeners, a zebra coat. And I'm wearing this now every day, like this is my everyday coat. And I wouldn't dare do this if I hadn't been through the process of being super extreme on a stage and on photo shoots and now feeling comfortable with this. And this to me doesnuld feel that extreme.
No, it isn't. Also in London, it isn't. Would you wear it in Athens?
I would. Yes. The thing is now, I used to be, when you're different in any way, you tend to draw attention. And I used to be very wary. And And when I used to draw attention, I feel very insecure and maybe try to blend in with the crowd. So I would wear clothes that everybody would wear so no one would sort of, look. But now I like aesthetically what I choose to wear. And to me, others' opinion, if they do or don't pay attention, it's very secondary. It doesn't dictate to what I do, because, and that's a thing. And that's now an issue because I like fashion clothes so much. I saw a pair of leather pants. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, this is amazing. I must try this, and get it, because again, it's not about, I don't know. I just feel through having been through the process of trying many different things, my palette has also sort of, I don't know, changed. And now I wear this every day, and I go with my friends sometimes. They're like, are they going to let you in to that bar dressed like that? And I'm like, if they don't let me, I don't want to go in the first place, to that place. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. My friends are also like that. They're always like, well, what's Kevin going to wear tonight?
Yeah, exactly.
I totally get it.
Yeah. But an interesting side story, I went to Nashville in the summer, and I went for a songwriting camp, and I had never been there before. And one of the experiences that really shocked me was because I went to a bar, and when they saw my outfit, they told me I have to leave.
Really?
Yes. And all of my friends freaked out, like, why does he have to leave? And they're like, they tried to like rationalize it and say, because this dress style is like not according to the policy of our bar or whatever. But it is very interesting, because I thought, oh, like this actually does happen. People are actually repressed sometimes. And it felt, I don't know, weird getting thrown out of a place, kicked out just because of what you're wearing. It just, I don't know, it felt, because Greece might be conservative, but that wouldn't happen,
right.
If it makes sense. It's a very random story. So essentially, I broke up from my relationship end of July and had applied for a writing camp, which is essentially a big house where many writers get together, get to know each other, write music. And there is some sort of, not seminar exactly, but guidance by someone called Andrea Stolpe, which I had been following for years. He used to teach songwriting in Berkeley. So I was supposed to actually to go to the UK October camp. They had one here. And when I broke up, I'm like, I'll either have to third wheel some of my friends, or I might as well send them an email, see if I can go to Nashville, like last minute. And they said, yes, of course you can. And that's how it sort of randomly happened. I went to this camp and wrote music with, 30 other people. And it's funny, I was the only European, let alone like Greek, and the entire camp. Everyone was from the US. And it was, again, a very interesting blend, because in any co-write group of 3 or 4 that I would participate in, I would always come up with the most random ideas, to music. For instance, someone would play an acoustic guitar part, and I would say instantly, what if we add an electronic drum beat on top of that to make it interesting? Which is very much how UK, the UK music industry sort of works. It's a little more experimental than country music.
And how did they take that?
I think always in every group that I was at in the beginning, they were very hesitant. But then, because what happened, we used to perform songs at night. So we would write the song in the morning, and then at night we would perform it. And that was very nice, because you saw the reaction. And because time and time again, the reaction from the groups that I was participating was very good. People started trusting the process more, because even if it wasn't, the best melody or song, you couldn't deny that it was something interesting that you would want to hear more of.
Sure.
Which is,
because it would be different.
Exactly. I think doing art is about expressing who you are authentically. And if you really express who you are, it's going to be different. It's the same example as with clothes. You tend to do what everyone else is doing because maybe you're afraid to stand out and do something that's a bit out there.
That's what I love about your music, because a friend of mine obviously introduced me to your music, and I started listening to it, and I just had it on repeat for like days and days and days, because it's just kind of my thing. And the one thing that I love about it, and my pet peeve, is when you find an artist and every song sounds the same.
Yeah.
I can't stand that. But you every song is so different, and you don't fit into a box with your style. Every track is different, and I love that because it's kind of like a new story every time a new track comes on.
Yes, yes, thank you very much. And it's interesting because I think the songs have very different inspirations behind them as well. So, for instance, Hypocrites that we mentioned before was written about the army. Happy Out of Love, which is a lost single, was written about being happy out of a relationship. Those two stimuli are very different. So the song will want to go to a very different place, and how you feel about those things is very different. And not every song has to be, even super serious, like, Hypocrites and Political and all of that. You can't just write a song about breaking up with someone, and just writing. So Happy Out of Love, I wrote it in like 2-3 hours. It was just like one of these instant songs. I wrote, and it was my first co-write session, and I wrote it the night before, and I took it to Max. I'm like, I have this idea. This is what I've written. He's like, I love it. Let's finish it. And it's one of these things we're just two friends. I didn't know him well, but it felt like two friends laughing, having fun, and writing a song. When we wrote the lyric, "I wish you the best, even though you're a mess. Please don't call me anymore." Like that wasn't a serious. We didn't view it as a serious song that we have to sort of, it didn't carry a lot of weight. It was just, this feels nice and funny. Let's just put it down, and it is what it is.
It's a celebration, and the video is just fun, and it's all about celebrating, and it's wild, and it's I just love it. It's one of my favorite songs right now. It's on my playlist. It comes on every day.
Thank you so much.
The other song that I absolutely love is Hello.
Interesting. People have said that, and they're very, very, very different. And Hello, again, had a very different inspiration. I wrote it during quarantine, and it's one of these songs where actually the guitars that we play music with came up with a riff that exists in the song, and I was writing a different piece of music, and I went to bed, and this happens every time, and I had an epiphany. Oh, like these two fit together so well. The music I was writing to the riff that the guitarist was playing, and they fit so perfectly with like they were meant to sort of live together. And yes, and again with Hello, it's a very different topic, and it has grungy guitars, but I wouldn't want to think, because Strange, which is another track, has acoustic guitar, I must do something that has the same sound, or just because I did Hello, Happy Out of Love must have crunchy guitars. It just, I follow every song where it wants to sort of go.
It's the perfect example of your music is so diverse, because I first heard Happy Out of Love, which is a very fun celebrate song, and then the next song that happened to play, it was a random song. It was Hello. And I was like, is this the same person? Like,
yes,
it's so cool. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, thank you. And it's funny because even performing them in the studio, because they're so different. And sometimes in one day, you must do 2 songs in the same day, but they're very different. And it feels as if though I am an actor and I have to embody a very different role for each song. So in one, you're this type of person with a certain, belief system. It's as if you have a character to narrate the song through, if it makes sense.
You have to be in a different zone.
Exactly, a very different zone. And also it's a challenge so you're going to come to the gig tomorrow. It's a challenge how we navigate from one song to the other. So the sequence of the songs, the order is very important, so that you don't have, Hello and then straight Happy Out of Love. It has to be a process that guides also the audience through without it being too different all the time.
Of course.
But on the tour with Scouting for Girls, I was very pleased because it was very accepting, and no one mentioned, even here in the message that they sent us or anyone, the songs are different to each other, because if they're placed in the right sort of playlist, it doesn't feel that way if you listen to like the right order. Yeah.
So you just mentioned you've just come off the tour with Scouting for Girls. How was that?
Oh yes, right. It was amazing. It was the first time I got to tour the UK, and I didn't know what to expect, to be honest, because coming from Greece, the UK always, for every artist, I think all over the world and in Europe, the UK is the peak of where you can reach, and having number one in the UK, even for American artists, is it's a big deal. So coming here, I really didn't know what to expect. And when we did the first show, it was in Edinburgh in Scotland, and we were getting applauded for the songs, and you could see people's faces light up and clapping and wanting to sing the words. It was just the best feeling ever. And also the main difference that I saw with respect to Greece, and especially playing in festivals in Greece where people didn't know the songs necessarily, is that people would get them instantly. So for Happy Out of Love, I could see people laughing to the lyrics as I was singing them for the first time, because you don't need to listen to a song 5 times to understand what it says, as maybe a Greek person has to, because it's not their native tongue. Yes, and that is really nice. And then the shows kept becoming bigger and bigger, and the reactions were, again, always really good every night. And then I realized, oh, maybe this is my audience. And this is the first time I felt, truly connected to an audience that I don't know. And it's very odd, because as soon as I would step on stage and I would look at their faces, I didn't feel nervous. And I don't know why, because I usually get nervous in small gigs in Athens, but I felt so, accepted and welcomed. Anyway, yeah, it was very, very nice.
It's amazing. I've been sort of following you on social media, and the reactions have been nothing but positive.
Yes, and I'm so glad. And now that we posted the show in London, because I have fans in Greece, but not that much here, because we've only been here 3 months and haven't done a show in London, by the way, in the past. Like, I did one 6 or 9 months ago, but very small venue.
Okay.
And when we posted about the gig, not only some people messaged me, but I saw comments on the post where people said, tag their friends, we have to go there, or we're going with capital letters. And I'm like, this is so exciting, that I'm so glad, because it's not even, in gigs about having, 1,000 people. It's about having even 5 that really care is actually more important. I don't know if this analogy is the correct one, but I'd rather have a strong connection with 5 people in my life than a mediocre connection with 1,000. And it's, I think, the same thing with fans in music. That is the ones who actually care, even if it's 2 people who make everything worthwhile,
Yeah. And are your fans diverse as your music?
Yes. And it's an interesting thought, because on Spotify now, you can see for each song which countries most listen to this song and what the age groups are, etc. And yes, I can see from each song the audience is actually very different. So for instance, Hello, which is a heavier song, is male dominated. Mostly it's like 60% male listen to it, and it's the ages like 23 to 35 is the age, the primary age that people listen to it. Whereas for Happy Out of Love, for instance, it's interesting because it's female dominated primarily, which maybe I would expect because it's a much softer song, but also the age groups are much lower. It's 18 to 22, and also below 18 is a significant portion as well. And it's all, and again, like female dominated, which is interesting because, it's not that every song appeals to the same audience necessarily. And I see that at live shows, where also in Athens, you have different groups of people. And when you play different songs, different people react more to them. Like some might hear Hypocrites or Hello and be like all for it. Others will hear Strange. Strange in Greece, because it's a big radio hit. Everyone knows that song, and always at live shows, it's the song that people wait for us to play. But yes, to answer your question, yes, the audience is quite diverse, and I find that very, very interesting. Yeah.
It's a positive thing.
I agree. I agree. And it also, because I've talked to some artists before, where you said your pet peeve was that an artist has one sound. The reason why some artists do that is because they have some success with one song or one sound. And then they're pushed by everyone to continue doing that. And then you can't really change. Whereas for me, the very good thing is that now I can do anything and no one would be surprised. Whatever I did, people look, yes. So, I wasn't expecting maybe that sound, but it makes sense. It's not as if he released 10 songs like Happy Out of Love and then just something totally different. They sort of expect when they announce a release, people don't know, what's going to come necessarily.
Of course.
Yes.
Talking about Strange, that's your biggest single to date, isn't it?
It is, but Happy Out of Love is catching up real quick. But it is, and it's, it's interesting because I always thought it was a good song, but when it became a big radio hit in Greece and got playlisted, I seriously thought, okay, guys, it's not. I don't know if it's that good of a song, because people got really obsessed over it, and especially radio loved it, and they would play it all over the country. And it has now nearly 25,000 Shazams, which, and if you think that it's primarily played on radio in Greece, that's a very, very high number. I mean, I can't imagine 25,000 people Shazamming the song because they listen to it. Anyway, so yes, it was a very nice feeling, performing live that song, but I wasn't expecting it to reach the heights that it did, to be absolutely honest.
So tell me about the track. Tell me about the song, how it evolved.
So Strange is one of those tracks where it took me a long time to write. So it was about a relationship I was in, and I wrote the verses when we were together. And it starts off strange, the way you act so strange, because it's about this feeling of being with someone and not sort of having them figured out. So you're like, are we together? Are we not together? It's this in-between state. And then the chorus I wrote as soon as we broke up. And it's, I want to call your number. Are you up for it? Like, let's give this a go. And the middle eight I wrote 6 months after we had broken up. So like having realized what the relationship was and taking a step back. So to me, that song encapsulated that entire relationship. And an interesting fact is that in the music video, the girl driving the car is actually the person I wrote it for.
I was going to ask that question.
Yes. so it is about her. And it's funny because we had broken up for 2 years at the time. And I asked her, do you want to play in the music video? I wrote this song for you. And we were in a coffee shop in Greece. And she put her AirPods on. I put the song. And I literally went to the bathroom and I stayed in just waiting for her to hear the song, because I couldn't watch her reaction. So I came out like 5 minutes later and she was still listening for a second time. And I asked her, so what do you think? She told me it's a very good song. And I told her, are you going to do it? You're going to come in the music video? And she said yes, which was incredible. She told me she was having second thoughts up to like the moment we had to travel to the location.
Where was it filmed?
So it was filmed in a small village in Spain.
Okay.
And it was because, I mean, for some reason when I heard the song, I knew that it need to have desert and sort of this.
It looked very Arizona.
Exactly. And it's actually in Europe, and we went to a small village in Spain where there was nothing around, literally. And it's funny because most of the scenes we filmed, we actually didn't have permit to film them. We just went out, filmed whatever we could, tried not to get arrested, and left. But yes, I'm glad I asked her to do it because she was so good. I mean, she elevated the whole music video. If she wasn't in it, it wouldn't be what it is. And I'm glad that now, I have this song and this video as a memory of that relationship. Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that story.
Yeah. Thank you.
Going back to touring, what's your favorite part of a day in the life of being on tour?
I mean, the best aspect is playing the live shows. And because you usually don't have that much time to view the cities and walk around that much, you usually have to go straight from the hotel to the venue, sound check, and then play the gig. So playing live is my absolute favorite thing. And also meeting people from each place, because after the gigs, now we would go, after the show ended, the Scouting for a Girl show ended, we would go out and meet some of the fans and some of the people who watch the show. And it's so nice to meet so many people from each city and feel that you sort of get to know about the culture and about how different people react. Because when we went from Scotland all the way to Brighton, you really see how, different some cities are to each other. For instance, Glasgow was very nice. They're very loud. They're very open. And in Scotland, they felt more open than in some other areas of the UK, whereas they feel a bit more reserved, that they have to open up. They need sort of more time to get to know you.
Sure.
They feel comfortable. But yes, my favorite part is actually playing the gigs. And it's funny because even though it was 2 weeks, which wasn't too long, but not too short either, even on the last day, I remember as soon as I opened my eyes in the morning, I would think, oh, we have a show today. And I was, super excited. Is the first thought that came to my mind. And yes, that's the nicest thing of being on tour.
Do you have kind of like a end of tour hangover?
They say that I have end of tour blues because your schedule is so hectic while you're on tour, and then you get back home and you feel like you're doing nothing. Yeah. And it's only been 4 or 5 days now. And I try to keep myself occupied, see friends. I'm going to Winter Wonderland later today. And thankfully we have a show tomorrow in London, but still it feels that, you're not doing enough because you get used to the pace of touring.
Of course. Yeah, it comes to a standstill and you're just used to the crazy fast-paced life, and then you're back to reality and you think, oh my gosh. Yes,
exactly. And you mentioned before you do tour managing as well.
Yes.
So you know what it's like. I don't know if it's the same. Do you get the same post-tour blues as a tour
I do. I get the so on the last tour that I was on, we had a break. I don't know, it was maybe 5 days in between these few shows that we had. And during those 5 days, I was just like, what am I going to do with myself?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. I think I put a picture on Instagram as well. I was like, tour life, home life, and like the difference in the way that you're dressed, and you're just at home in your ugly clothes and just bumming around, and then at night you're dressed up and it's exciting and you're under all the lights, and that's quite fun. So yeah, it's just a balance. I think it's hard to find that balance.
Yes, I agree. And also it's when you're on tour, your reality is very different. So, and I was telling this to a friend that it's so what you experience, especially as an artist performing, which is you go in front of 1,000 people and more than 1,000 maybe every night almost, and you perform songs, you get this adrenaline rush, and then so it's funny because even though we were a support act, when you approach the what's it called, the bar that separates the audience from the stage, and you reach out your hand and you see that people are screaming to touch your hand. It's a very weird thing to sort of, because if you do it every night, you normalize it in your head and you think that that's a normal reaction. Or when I remember when we were after the show at the merch stand and some people will ask for pictures every night, then that also gets normalized very quickly. And because we would see, so people would walk by, and especially girls who were very, maybe embarrassed to ask for a picture. And I would say, but you could tell it when they were looking, oh, maybe they want one. So I'd ask them, it's okay, do you want a picture? And it's funny because now I found myself, and I don't want to sound big-headed one bit, but when I came back on Saturday from the tour, on Sunday I was walking in London, and I got this look from a girl walking next to me. And my first thought was, oh, maybe she wants a picture. But that was like, I was like, no, you have to get this out of your head. This is a different life. Maybe she liked your coat, or she liked your hair, or she just looked for no reason, And I can't imagine what the reality distortion is for bigger artists, like, if Billie Eilish or, Dua Lipa or, any big artist that gets so much exposure, and then they have to get used to a very different reality when they go back. And then it's understandable to get paranoid, because even if one time, so one thing that happened to me quite recently a fan texted me on Instagram, right? I replied, and they screenshotted my reply, even though it wasn't. I didn't say, thankfully, I didn't say anything that was, I literally. So he asked, what? That was before Happy Out of Love. He said, when is new music coming? Blah blah. And I said, you wait, like this is going to be like really great. And he screenshotted it and uploaded on his story and tagged me. And when I saw it, I was like, okay, thank God I didn't say anything. But that means I have to be very, very, very careful of anything I say or do, because you don't know who's gonna screenshot this. And maybe not even now, maybe what if you become famous in 3 years from now and someone goes back to a conversation, screenshots it, and then sends it. So I can imagine, someone being paranoid, because if you say something one time and someone heard it and it went public, and you freak out very easily about these.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you have a sense of responsibility for your fans? For people that are, so say your younger fans who are looking up to you as a role model.
I mean, I want to be the best version for them that I can be. Yes, I do feel a sort of responsibility, but not. I mean, I don't feel, I feel responsibility, but not responsible for sort of, how they perceive what I do. But I think that it's important that the messages overall that you portray are the right ones. For instance, resilience, follow what you want, patience, like all of those, like, or be grateful for what's happening to you and be humble. All of those values that I myself believe have as a person, I would want to portray them so that, they sort of, if they're influenced even 1% by me, yes, I would want them to sort of get that. And if it's, yes. And it's interesting because I don't know, I still haven't figured out how to perceive the relationship with fans, because it's not the same as a friend. It's not the same as, someone you're going out with, but you have strong feelings for them, but I just haven't found how to place them in my mind. Like, what is this relationship? Because I feel, love for them, but I don't know them. So how can you love someone you haven't met? I don't know. It's, yes.
It's a strange world, isn't it? When it comes to that aspect.
Exactly, it is. And now, for instance, we're creating a fan mailing list. And I thought that one thing I'd really like to do, because we're going to have people sign up and put like their names, email addresses and stuff. And I really want to do this. Okay, people are going to be listening to this podcast probably before this comes out, but it's fine. I want to write Christmas cards to some of the fans that sign up and send it to their homes, with something written, because it's just a nice thing to do. And I loved getting Christmas cards. But then again, I thought it feels right to do that. But again, I don't know what sort of a relationship, you have with the fans. And is that okay to do or not okay to do? Where is the sort of...
Where's the line?
Where's the line?
I think it's a wonderful thing to do, because it's a personal aspect to you. You're not this untouchable person that sometimes people try and be.
Yes, exactly.
So it's very personal. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's talk about your EP, Into the Rabbit Hole.
It was an interesting journey, creating this EP, and also, because it was a bit darker overall than what I had done before. I do feel that sometimes you need to embrace, all emotions. All emotions are okay to have. And it's also one of the reasons why I ended up releasing Happy Out of Love, because in the beginning, talking about a responsibility to fans, I was thinking, is this the right message? Sort of having these lyrics and being sarcastic about your ex partner. And then I thought, there is no wrong feeling. Even if you feel that you're pissed at someone and want to, swear at them, that's okay. Like, it's part of the human experience, and we shouldn't suppress anything that sort of happens to us. And Into the Rabbit Hole was actually about some of these feelings. Primarily, I wrote most of the songs during COVID and a bit after, where I wasn't in the best place, mentally. But to me, to get into the other side of wonders, you have to go into the rabbit hole. So through the darkness comes light, and you have to embrace. But if you don't embrace it, you can't come through the other end. That's why I love this analogy in Alice in Wonderland, because if you think about it, to reach Wonderland, you have to go through the rabbit hole.
That's right.
It's a very nice sort of metaphor of how life is, essentially.
It's true. Your whole life.
Yes, exactly. Your whole life. And it's interesting that now Happy Out of Love, which is the brightest song I've ever had, and actually many of the songs that are going to come later after Happy Out of Love are very positive and bright and dancey and very, full of life. And because I felt that I went through that phase, and now I'm through the other side, and I'm embracing this stage that I'm at right now, and not thinking, oh, maybe this is too positive, or maybe this is too. I don't overthink, right.
I like how you said there's new dancey and positive, because it brings me to my next question, which is your love for disco.
Yes. Yes. So this, especially on the mid to late section of Happy Out of Love, is so obvious. And I don't know. So there was this club called Cinderella in Athens, and it's a disco club, and it's my favorite place to go in the world. And I used to go there so much. And I think because what's also funny is that people dance to disco more than any other genre. Always. It doesn't matter where you are. If disco comes on, or the 80s vibe or ABBA, people just start dancing. And I just love that energy and that atmosphere that disco creates. And it's embedded to me, not by listening, because I don't listen to disco when I'm alone at home necessarily. But I went so much to that place, and they play the entire catalog of best disco hits. So that was, I think, ingrained in me now. Yes, and most of the songs actually have elements of disco in them. But again, as with the clothes, where I went to extremes to find a balance, I found that also with disco now, I incorporate elements of disco into who I am as an artist, rather than me doing a disco record. Maybe in the future I will. I would love to actually to do maybe a disco album.
That would be amazing.
Yes. But for now, I find that I find some aspects of it interesting, and I'm backing vocals that disco has, and I'm incorporating them into my own music.
It's amazing. Have you been to the ABBA Voyage?
No, I really, really want to go. Have you been?
It's so good. It will blow your mind. I'll take you, actually. I will take you. You'll love it.
It's funny because, is it with holograms?
So I thought they were holograms, but I have a friend who works there, and it's actually projections.
Okay. So how does it look real? Like
you feel like you can walk up to them and shake their hand.
Oh, okay.
And it's all around you. It's like the ceiling and the walls, and it's just it's an experience you would have never experienced before.
Okay. Yes. Nice.
It is so good. I highly recommend it. And even if I'm talking to someone who isn't an ABBA fan, I'm like, you must go see this, because you will come out of there a different person.
Okay. Yes, I must go, because one of the favorite musicals of my mom is Mamma Mia, and we used to go. I've watched it more than 10 times in my life. And again, on Happy Out of Love, in the chorus, where you have so many backing vocals and people singing together, was inspired by West End, choruses, because
Sure.
people dancing together and singing together and having this uplifting effect is really, really nice. Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing.
Okay, I'll yes,
definitely.
Yeah.
So let's just move on to, I've just some quick fire questions, and let's see how you do. No pressure.
Okay. Yes, pressure's on.
Actually, they're not so quick fire at first, but what should people expect when coming to see your show for the first time?
A lot of energy. I know, yes, a lot of energy, and a very diverse catalog.
Good stuff. What is your dream music venue?
O2 Arena.
Good.
Yes.
What advice would you give your 6-year-old self?
Trust the process and trust that all will be well. And that's, I think, the advice I still give to myself now, because we tend to rush to want to run before we can even walk. So in the early days when I was doing shows, and that's back in like 2018, 2019, I remember telling to my manager then, I don't understand. I was doing covers, singing 2 hours a night at the local smaller clubs. No one was even paying attention, right? And I remember I was telling him, why am I even doing this? You know, I want to be playing in England. I want to be touring the world. And like, how is this helping me? And because no one would pay attention and no one knew who I was, and I was doing covers, I had to really hone on my performance skills and be resilient, because even if no one paid attention and they had their back turned on me because they didn't know who I was, I had to sort of be there and sing and try to get the crowd with me. And, you know, it's funny because doing this tour now with Scouting for Girls, I realized that there's a very Karate Kid moment where I realized everything I had been doing in front of 50 people, maybe not paying attention. I was now, but again, in Athens, I managed to start an audience through the live shows. I became better at live shows. But now when I was in front of 2,000 people and I was doing the same, you know, things I was doing back in Athens at the small bar, that's what elevated my whole performance. And even Scouting for Girls, Roy, the singer, told me, you're such a good performer and you managed to get a crowd with you, because as a support act, no one knows who you are. So you have to win them over every single night. And I think we were able to do that because we had been through all of those things in the past, where at the time we didn't realize, you know, why is this even important? And I think this is such a recurring theme in life, where you're going through something and you think, why am I going through this? But then like maybe 2, 3, 5 years later, you're like, I'm so glad this happened, because now I wouldn't be able to seize this opportunity to do this, you know, if I hadn't gone through the previous stuff that at the time I didn't realize was even important.
Of course. And that's going to keep happening.
Yes, exactly. So I try to be grateful and, you know, trust the process. Even if I don't understand why something is happening now, I trust that in 5 years' time it will all, make sense.
Exactly. Do you have a favorite gig moment?
Favorite gig moment? Yes. It's when the crowd sings back. And that's my favorite part of any gig. Even if I am at a gig or I watch a gig online, that's when I get goosebumps, because it feels like a communal thing. Many people are singing together. Yes, and that's my absolute favorite. And especially if they know, so that hasn't happened in the UK yet, but in Greece, if they sing the lyrics back to one of your songs, that's the best moment ever. Because you feel so connected and, I don't know, accepted by everyone who's there. You just feel that you're one entity.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
What are you listening to at the moment?
That's a very good question. So I listened to Jungle, the new album, which is very nice. I'm into Boy Genius. I don't know if you have heard of them.
I have. And
I love so they released a new EP now, but I really love the album they released. I mean, they're it's funny because I discovered them. I mean, yes, don't tell anyone this, from the music videos, because they're amazing one shots. And I watched them time and time again. And then I started getting into the music. And it's just nice because I feel it's the type of music you can play at when you're on your own, when you wake up in the morning at a house party. It just applies in so many different situations. And that's how I sort of got into it. Same as Boy Genius, I got into them in the summer because you can just play their entire record, and be, relaxed in the summer evening. And it just, flows so nicely. And same as 1975, I find, because their melodies are, and they create a big atmosphere. I don't know, I think I enjoy, maybe, I realize this now, maybe I enjoy artists that create a landscape and a picture more than, necessarily a distinct melody. Because in all of these artists, I actually like their sound more than a specific song that I'm in love with, you know?
And it's a big feeling.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
What's an insult you've received that you're proud of?
That I'm proud of. That's okay. I've received insult.
It's a great question.
It's a great question. It's a great question. So, it wasn't. I've received it as an insult, even though I don't think it's an insult, that I'm too out there. And although the person meant it as an insult, I'm actually very proud of it. And this is a recurring thing that happens. It's a recurring sort of insult. People might say, "Oh, like, what are you wearing?" Or especially if I go to place, it's funny, where there are Greeks and they don't know because I don't look Greek. So they might say in Greek something insulting about like my outfit. And it's funny because I feel proud in the moment. So I'm just not saying this, I'm not just saying this for the sake of the podcast, but I genuinely feel great because yes, I am different and I'm not afraid to be different and show it. So
and you're challenging their feelings.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Perfect answer.
That's such a good question, though. Such a good question.
What would be the title of the book about you if your worst enemy wrote it?
It's funny because all of these questions have a twist in the end. So I'm like, okay, I know the answer. But then if your worst enemy wrote it, if my worst enemy wrote it, the title of my book. I'd say, okay, I'd say it would be How to Succeed Without Talent. That would be the title of the book, just because I think that my biggest attribute as a person is resilience. Because it's not as if I wrote my first song and it became, massive, or the first time I did anything, it was, sort of super successful. But through writing many, many songs and keeping at it, I managed to sort of reach somewhere. That's how, yes, but it's such an interesting question.
What is one message you would like to give your fans?
Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself.
Do you sing in the shower?
Yes, I love to.
What's your favorite song to sing in the shower?
So now my most recent favorite song is from Nothing But Thieves, and it's Amsterdam. Yes. Such a nice vocal range.
What's your favorite song to perform live on stage?
Happy Out of Love. Yes. And Hello, interestingly. So you'll see the show tomorrow, but I think either Hello or Happy Out of Love.
Okay. What about your music is rebellious, unconventional, or unusual?
The themes, I think, are very unusual. So, for instance, Happy Out of Love. It's always like your questions, that they have a twist somehow in terms of the concept. So I say the themes.
What has been your favorite concert you've ever attended?
My favorite concert is Catfish and the Bottlemen. I saw them back in 2015. And it's in an electric ballroom, which isn't a very big venue. But I was astounded that every single person in the room knew every single word from every single song. It wasn't as if though, people were singing one chorus and that was it. They were actually singing very loud every single lyric. And that was so nice to see, because I am a fan. I used to be a big fan. But even I didn't know, every song by heart. And it's such a nice experience.
Nice. Do you have a routine before performing?
Not usually. I just drink tea and try to relax. That's it. And be zen before we go on stage.
And give all your energy then.
Yes, exactly. Because I feel if you don't relax before and are tense, you can't sort of, go with a clear mind and perform.
Sure. If you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be?
I could change one thing about the industry. I'd say to give more attention to music. And even though we're talking about the music industry, that's an interesting statement. But I think people give more attention to things such as social media following rather than music content. And I think that is as bad for the artists as it is long term for the labels, because I think everything that we do in life on a personal level or on any level is always a trade-off between short-term and long-term gain. And I think, yes, having a big TikTok following or being a TikTok influencer might mean you sell a lot of records in the next 6 months or in the next year if you put out a record. But if you actually focus on, choosing artists that have something to say or a sound or are focusing on their craft long-term, and speaking 10, 15, 20 years, overall, that will also be more successful and better for the audience as well. I think that's the only thing that sort of I've been disillusioned by is how focused people are on numbers, and especially like TikTok and Instagram numbers. How many followers you have, therefore, we can't sign you or we can't do this because you don't have this, you don't tick this box. And it's interesting because, so if you have good songs as an artist, so now whether we did the Scouting for Girls tour, it's like you have this asset that still hasn't been utilized, or it can be utilized in many, many ways. If you make a TikTok video and it becomes viral, then that was it. You can't keep reposting the same video every week or whatever. Whereas if you have a good song, you can keep playing it forever at every gig, at every festival. And if it's a good song, it will draw people in.
That's right.
So it's an interesting thought that now I realized, our live set is actually starting to become really good because Happy Out of Love was added to the set. And this helps, now I got like 1,000 followers from the tour. But it's not only that, it's that on every gig that we ever do now, people will hear that song or that set overall and be like, let's follow that artist. So
that's right.
So it's like having good music, it's like having, the following, like the asset that can draw the following before having the actual numbers, if it makes sense. Because if not now, if some other songs have the same appeal as Happy Out of Love does, I know, and that's the discussion I had with my manager as well, that if I go on big stages and festivals, I know that now we're at the level and the songs are at that level that people will be like, that's a cool song. Who's this artist? Let me see what they're about. Like, let me follow them on Instagram, blah, blah.
That's a great festival song as well.
I think so as well. Another one, yes, that is probably going to be either the next single or the one before the summer. And it's, and it's nice because we have dancey songs or uplifting songs. It's so nice to see the reaction live because people want to dance and they want to move, and you see them, doing it in front of your eyes. And it's just, yes.
Exciting. So, I can't wait.
Same.
Thank you, Delta. I've loved chatting with you.
Thank you, Kevin. Same here.
I look forward to seeing the gig tomorrow.
Yes, I look forward to seeing you as well.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.